All right, let's talk about the invisible machine that keeps our biggest companies from just flying apart. It's called corporate governance, but a better way to think about it is as the company's operating system. It's running in the background, making everything work, even when you don't see it.
I mean, seriously, have you ever stopped to think about that? You've got thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of people spread all across the globe dealing with unbelievable complexity. What is the force that actually stops all that from descending into total chaos? Well, it's not luck.
The answer, of course, is corporate governance. It is the set of rules, the practices, the whole framework that keeps the ship pointed in the right direction. And that operating system analogy, it's perfect, because it's the foundational code that dictates how everything else is allowed to run.
So, here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the core code itself. Then we'll look at the users, the people with the power. We'll check out the system's defenses, how it gets upgraded, and finally, how you keep the whole thing running smoothly. All right, first things first, the core code. Just like any piece of software, a company has a foundational source code that defines what it is, what it can do, and what its purpose is. This is the bedrock.
So what does this code look like? Well, you've got the corporate charter and bylaws. That's basically the company's constitution. It says, here's who we are and here are the rules. Then there's entity and subsidiary governance, which is like the system map, showing how all the different parts of the company connect and follow the same program. And finally, corporate minutes and records. Think of this as the system's undeletable log file. Every major decision is reported there forever.
And I really want to drive this point home. This isn't just some boring paperwork that gets filed away in a dusty cabinet. This is the source code. You can't just go in and change it on a whim. Messing with this stuff is a huge deal because it literally defines the legal reality of the company.
Okay, so if that's the code, what about the people using the system? That brings us to our next level, the users. We're talking about the board, the executives, even the shareholders. They all have different accounts and different permission levels, all managed by a very strict set of rules.
So who gets to push the buttons? Well, the system defines that very clearly. Board and committee management sets the rules for the people at the very top. Then you have something called delegation of authority, which is just a fancy way of saying who has permission to do what, who can sign off on buying new office chairs versus who can sign off on buying a whole other company. The OS also controls how executives get paid, and, maybe most importantly, it has a protocol for what happens when a leader leaves, which we call succession planning.
Now, a company's operating system doesn't just manage things on the inside. It has a whole set of protocols for how it interacts with the outside world. This includes managing relationships with shareholders and investors, dealing with all the other stakeholders, employees, customers, the local community, and making sure the company is transparent through its corporate disclosures.
Okay, so we've got our code and our users. But any good operating system needs protection, right? It needs antivirus software, a firewall. That's what this next part is all about. The corporate immune system, designed to find and fight off threats before they crash the whole company.
And at the heart of this immune system is a really cool concept called the 3 lines of defense. The first line, that's your everyday management. They're on the front lines, dealing with risks as they pop up. The second line is your specialists, the risk and compliance departments who are watching over everything. And the third line, that's internal audit. They're like an independent inspector, reporting directly to the board that yes, the first 2 lines are actually doing their jobs. It's defense in layers.
And these defenses are run by some very specific programs. Risk governance sets the rules for how much risk the company is even willing to take. You've got rules for conflicts of interest to make sure people are making decisions for the company, not for themselves. There's even a policy on policies, which, it's a bit meta, but it's a master document for how you even write rules. And then you have the Whistleblower program, which is basically the system's report a bug button. It's a secure way for anyone to raise a red flag.
Now, you wouldn't run your computer on an operating system from 20 years ago, would you? Of course not. It would be slow, insecure, and couldn't run any new software. The same is true for corporate governance. It has to evolve. It has to get regular updates to deal with the modern world.
And a fantastic example of a major system upgrade is the shift from CSR to ESG. You hear these terms all the time. CSR, corporate social responsibility, was often about philanthropy, doing good things on the side. But ESG, environmental, social, and governance, is a total upgrade. It's not about what a company does with its profits. It's about how it makes its profits. It's about being good at its very core. And investors are paying very close attention to this. And the security patches and feature updates just keep on coming. In today's world, you absolutely need a patch for data governance because data is one of the most valuable and vulnerable assets. You need a whole new ethics module for AI governance. And you better believe you need a detailed plan for huge events like mergers and acquisitions, so that bringing in another company doesn't corrupt your entire system.
So finally, let's talk about maintenance. You don't just install an operating system and then walk away and hope for the best. You have to run diagnostics, you have to optimize performance, you have to keep it healthy. It's a constant job.
So what's in that maintenance toolkit? Well, you run regular board effectiveness reviews. That's like a deep system diagnostic to find any bugs. You use governance dashboards, which are like a real-time health monitor on your screen. And you provide ongoing training for your directors and officers. Think of that as installing the latest security updates for your most important users, so they know what the new threats are. And this really is the key takeaway of this whole thing. You're never done with governance. It's not a checklist you finish. The best-run companies in the world treat it as a process of constant, continuous improvement. They are always looking for ways to make the system better, faster, and more secure. So I'll leave you with this to think about. We live in an age where some companies are more powerful and influential than many countries. So, what should the next mandatory update be for their operating system? What new ethical patch or social responsibility protocol should we, as a society, demand they install? It's a really important question for all of us.